Your Excellency, the President of the Portuguese Republic, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. Right Honorable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada. Honorable Mélanie Joly, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada. Your Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Portugal, João Gomes Cravinho. Your Excellency, Secretary of State for the Portuguese Communities, Paulo Cafofo. Her Worship, Olivia Chow, Mayor of Toronto. Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Portugal, António Leão Rocha. Members of Parliament of Portugal, Members of Parliament of Canada, distinguished guests. It is a great honor to stand before you today, the representatives of Portugal and Canada, two of the most welcoming nations of the world. As a dual citizen of both of these nations, like many of my fellow diasporic people gathered here, it is my privilege to both welcome you and be welcomed here as a curator of this exhibition, as an immigrant, a settler, and a guest on this land, whose indigenous past and present I would like you to join me in acknowledging. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. About this exhibition, I hope it can speak for itself, but if you indulge me, I would like to read a brief passage from my curatorial statement, which is over there. In motion, we are still. The story of Portuguese immigrants and their descendants in Canada can be told in as many ways as there are people to tell it. Even if one could weave all versions into one grand tapestry, it would still not tell the full story. One thing will always be missing: the past itself. But without the missing part, there is no story to tell. In the case of the Portuguese, as for all cultures grounded in histories of movement, the missing part is the story. Not missing like emptiness or longing, but as the sand lifted off the ground, stuck to the soles of traveling feet, marking its place in time by being both present and absent, here and there. Living memory dies of consensus. Like waves, memory is not a settled thing or even a thing at all. It is a force that can be physically experienced with all our senses but never grasped, because it only exists when passing. This exhibition is another fleeting moment that one day will exist as a memory. Whatever force it has will be felt differently by its visitors and passersby, who will either avoid or dip their toes or dive into it. Some will wistfully arch back to the start of their own stories of immigration, of their Canada, digging up the memory of a time when they stood up with their back towards the waves, wondering where they might end up. Some of them, and some of us, ended up here for now. Perpetual motion, impossible to replicate in mechanical devices, is a constant of our shared human condition, which is what this and every story is about. Thank you, and enjoy the exhibition.
Short. Thank you, Gilberto. Bon dia, everyone. Excellencies, Prime Ministers, Ministers, distinguished visitors, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Metro Hall. On behalf of the City of Toronto, I would like to thank the Portuguese Embassy for choosing a city revenue to host this remarkable exhibition. As you look, you see the waves of immigrants arriving to the shore of Toronto and of Canada. And Toronto is really a story of people who packed up what they have and arrived to this place of hope, of hard work, a story of determination and a belief that we can create a better future for ourselves and our children, and a place of belonging. Toronto's story is also my story. I'm immigrant from a different part of the world, and now at City Hall and as a mayor. It's the same journey, the successive waves of Portuguese immigrants that have made to settle here and helped build this beautiful city of ours. Building it brick by brick, whether it's buildings or the streetcars, laying bricks, caring for us when we are not well, and shaping our identity as Canadians and Torontonians. And it shaped it so much because I represented the little Portugal. It's very big Portugal. It's called Little Portugal in and around the downtown neighborhood. And it shaped me in a way that from listening to Amalia, the Queen of Fado, a few years ago, to Nelly Furtado, to eating the quails, the codfish, and of course, the custard, which is, yes, the custard and the custard tarts. That yellow, it is that yellow. Rebelo told me that. It's true. I didn't just make that up. The 71 years of diplomatic relations, but it's 70 years since the arrival. And our friendship and really the Portuguese Canadian making our city and our country strong, more affordable and safer and caring for each other where everyone feels belong. And I wish you, Mr. President, and members of your visiting delegation, a successful and enjoyable visit to Toronto and the community. And all the rest of our friends here, enjoy the exhibit. And yes, it might be fleeting, but if you want to capture the essence of it, I'm blessed to be given a book by Rebelo himself, Fernandez, the curator, of course, called This Pilgrim Nation. That really defines who we are. In Canada, we are a pilgrim nation, so get a copy of it. Thank you so much, and I would like to now invite the Prime Minister to say a few words. And of course, he's a lot taller than I am. And now
Good afternoon. Bonjour. Hola. It is great to be here in Toronto with all of you, but particularly with our great MPs, Julie Serowitz, Charles Sousa, Peter Fonseca, Alexandra Mendez, and our Foreign Minister, Mélanie Joly. It is wonderful to be gathered with you all. Thank you, Mayor Chow, for those stirring words and that introduction. But mostly, President Rebelo de Sousa, thank you so much, Marcelo, for choosing to come here. It's been close to 20 years, I think, since a Portuguese president came to visit Canada. I know you spent a few excellent days in my hometown, the right way to start any visit to Canada. But the warmth and the energy here in this room, and of your welcome here, I know, from having spent a lot of time with the Portuguese community here in Toronto, you are going to have a wonderful couple of days. We had an excellent conversation earlier that I'll allude to in a second, but it is really such a privilege to be here with you now. Gilberto, thank you for curating this exhibit and for sharing it with us. It was incredibly touching just to spend a few moments looking at some of the faces and the images, faces that include Charles Sousa's father as one of the very first migrant laborers to come over 70 years ago as we celebrate that. And Gilberto, this is not to take away from this extraordinary exhibit, but the history of the Portuguese Canadians here in Toronto and across the country isn't on these walls here. It's right here in this room with business leaders, community leaders, political leaders, leaders from the entertainment industry, people who understand how deeply the richness of Canada comes from its diversity, coming and staying true to your Portuguese identity, your Portuguese roots, and adding that to Canada is one of the things that has made Canada so incredibly successful over the past decades. And the Portuguese community, as of kicked off officially 70 years ago, but unofficially going all the way back to the first immigrants to Canada, people like Matthew da Costa, who was also the first black Canadian immigrant, of course with a name like da Costa, we know where he was coming through. There is a deep, deep tradition in Canada that goes back far beyond 70 years. Portuguese people have helped build this country. You've been coming to Canada for centuries, and waves of immigration drew in thousands of people who worked as builders, teachers, journalists, doctors, entrepreneurs, and so many other professions. People who sought opportunity in Canada and then created it for others, and still do so today. À travers le pays, des centaines de milliers de Canadiens sont fiers de leurs racines portugaises. And Portuguese Canadians are out there defining Canadian excellence on the world stage. Think of Nelly Furtado or, okay, yes, John Tavares. I'm a Habs fan, but you have to talk about his excellence. As countries, Canada and Portugal are good friends and allies. Our diplomatic relations have been strong for over 70 years. And we felt that friendship deeply when Portugal sent us 140 firefighters this summer to help us fight wildfires across the country. Obrigado. We're both founding members of NATO. Our trade relationship is incredibly strong, especially thanks to CETA, which has meant more great jobs in both of our countries and new opportunities for businesses. Le Canada et le Portugal sont deux pays de l'Atlantique et on travaille ensemble pour protéger nos océans et lutter contre les changements climatiques. Évidemment, on partage aussi des valeurs comme la démocratie et on s'engage à continuer de défendre ces valeurs. Le Portugal a fourni une aide militaire et politique importante à l'Ukraine. I had an excellent talk with Marcelo about it, that both of our countries continue to be deeply committed to doing whatever it takes for as long as it takes to stand up to Putin and authoritarianism and stand with Ukraine. You know, it was a remarkable lunch where we got to talk about the state of the world. But as you pointed out, Marcelo, as we were leaving, the alignment of values and of principles between Canada and Portugal run so incredibly deep. And it is extraordinarily important in these consequential times that friends stand together. And not just because we are friends or because we share a history, but because standing strong for the values that underpin our free and open societies is more important now than it ever has been. I believe it's next year that you're celebrating 50 years of democracy. And the commitment that Portugal has to democracy and shows every day with the MPs here, with the commitment of people to continue to believe in strong institutions that are there to serve citizens and build a better future, to push back against misinformation and disinformation, and understand that if any one of us are to succeed, we must do it in cooperation and partnership with those around us. Portugal has always been, through 500 years of history at least, a country connected to every part of the world. And that prepares you well for this era we're in right now, where globalization has shrunk the size of the planet and meant that whether we're talking about pandemics or climate change and its impacts or global conflicts or regional conflicts, everything is interconnected. And it's easy for people you look at the situation they're in and be hurting or be frustrated because groceries are too expensive and it's hard to find places to live. But we have to understand as well that as much as governments will and continue to step up to support people, global problems have global solutions. And our capacity to work together with our friends to solve these global problems, to lean in on protecting our oceans and fighting climate change, to stand up for democracy and truth and free independent journalism, to be there and understanding that our responsibility is to look out for each other, whether it's from institutions, from politicians, from business leaders, from artists. This is a consequential time where we must look to the future with hope and optimism. And one of the ways to do that is to remember the lessons of the past, of people who came to this country determined to build themselves a better future for themselves, for their community, but also for their new country, and achieved beyond anyone's wildest imaginings. That is an extraordinary example of why we should be all so optimistic about our capacity to solve the challenges we're facing and build a better future, as long as we lean in and do it together. So it is my deep honor and privilege to introduce my friend and yours, President Marcelo.
Dear Justin, dear Prime Minister of Canada, dear friend of Portugal, dear inspirational leader, dear Foreign Minister of Canada, our Ministro dos Negócios Estrangeiros, Foreign Minister of Portugal, dear Minister, dear Secretary of State, dear Canadian federal MPs, queridos deputados federais aqui no Canadá, Secretary of State for the Communities, you were there, hidden, but está lá. Dear Mayor, you are really an example, just our example. We traveled the oceans, we crossed them, we traveled around the world, and finally you arrived at Canada where you're happy. And all of you, you are very happy in Canada. Isn't it true? Very happy. Very, very happy in Canada. And now coming, Gilberto. What a wonderful exhibition. Que exposição fenomenal. Wonderful. Wonderful. Impressive. But today, as the Prime Minister said, as Justin said, it's difficult. The time we are really living in. A war, a global war. It's not an European war, it's a global war. In the causes and in the effects. It's difficult to rule the countries in such a period. Inflation, energy problems, so many geopolitical struggles. It's a very difficult period for any government, for any Prime Minister, in any continent. But today you are, you are pioneers, you are the heroes. Today's heroes, it's you. You are the heroes. I was 5 years old. I'm about to be 75, so I was about, at that time, about to be 5 years old when the Saturnia name of the vessel arrived at Halifax. And it was a beginning of a new history, o começo de uma nova história in your lives, in the lives of your families, children, grandchildren. Happily, some of you are still alive. But others have their children and grandchildren here. And 70 years that you have lived are 70 years of the history of Canada and the history of Portugal. The history of Portugal, because we never forgot you. Never, ever. We'll forget you. Crossing the ocean needed such a courage. Such a courage. It's not today. It was in the 50s of the last century. Struggling with your decision of leaving your country, your roots, your family, discovering a new world, a new language, a new great country. So you are heroes. Thank you for what you did for Portugal. Portugal is well respected here because of you. Not because of the president or even the prime minister or the MPs. Ah, the Portuguese MPs. Well. Well, I'm sorry. But they come from every party with a parliamentary group, with so many opinions, but all Portuguese. And this history made the difference in Canada and made the difference in Portugal. You never forgot Portugal. Portugal never forgets you. But you love Canada. Every one of you told me, I'm happy in Canada. I'm well integrated in Canada. We deserve to give really a word of gratitude to Canada, to the Canadian people, to the Canadian officials, to the Canadian government. And thank the Prime Minister for, in the middle of this life of ruling a country, being able to be with us, together, showing the respect for our community, for you, for your families, for Portugal. You are really the best. You are really the best, what you've done. I saw it in Montreal. I had seen it in the 80s, but now I saw it better. By then I was lecturing. It was different. I'm going to see it more carefully than I had done it at the end of last century, beginning of this century, in Toronto. You made a difference in Canada. Of course, our dear Mayor also, and so many communities that came from far away, far away. But you made the difference, dear pioneers. I saw that picture that Justin mentioned. Your father was there, Charles. Your father was there. It's so strong. A couple of guys crossing the ocean, starting a community of 500,000 people. Think of those that already passed away. Around 1 million people or more that lived this adventure. It is an adventure, a good adventure. And I'm so thankful for it. For those that are, Justin said, everywhere. Politics, economy, society, serving the community, everywhere. Portuguese. We are proud of you. And we are thankful to Canada because it's an open-minded country. It's a country that understood how important it is to be great. They are great, not just in physical dimension. They are number 2 in the world. In human dimension, they are great, great people. That's why they are so influential throughout the world. And they accepted us. We are also universal. We are everywhere. Everywhere. But we were very lucky having a country like Canada, accepting us the way we are. The way we are. Ça a été merveilleux. Ça a été merveilleux. Je dois parler un tout petit peu de français, bien sûr. Justin l'a fait, alors. Nous, francophones, depuis très longtemps, on doit le faire. C'était mieux de le faire à Montréal, mais quand même, je le fais ici. Je le fais ici. Ouais. Parce qu'il n'y a pas de différence dans ce grand pays. C'est la même chose. Tout le monde est différent et tout le monde est égal. That's democracy. Democracy is being different, respecting diversity, but with the same rights, the same duties, the same wish of building a powerful country, but more important than that, a fair country with social justice. It's not enough to have growth. It's very important. But sustainable development means much more than that. And you have been building Canada together with so many for 70 years. Muito obrigado. Muito obrigado. And as I cannot decorate all of you, I cannot. Otherwise, I would spread justice in these 500,000 people. I have to choose someone. Some of them have already received it. But there is one, by chance. She's not from Toronto. But it happens. Ça arrive, comme dirait l'autre. It's a federal member of parliament, and she's a woman, which means she's the future. Because women are the future. They're the present. But they are the future, both in Canada and in Portugal. So, I call Alexandra Mendes, MP, and what I'm going to give her, it's given to all of you. São condecorados todos os pioneiros neste gesto. São condecorados os filhos, os netos, bisnetos dos pioneiros. Ela, nesta cerimónia, vai ser condecorada. Mas há mais cerimónias até ao fim da minha viagem. There will be more ceremonies till the end of my visit. This time, it's a lady. And she promises she loves Toronto the same way she loves Montreal. Almost. No. Justin doesn't allow it. Il ne permet pas. No. But almost. E agora comigo, say it the Portuguese way. Viva o Canadá! Viva Portugal! Viva a amizade entre o Canadá e Portugal! Long live our friendship, our fraternity, Canada and Portugal!